This has been a long time coming. You know, guys, today it's time for a GOAT video. Yup, you know, Sanji. Come on. Today we're making a video on Sanji's growth. We've done this before, but we've done it with Zoro and Luffy. And in those videos, what we pretty much touched on was how they can grow slightly as characters and how they can grow mostly as combatants. It was a mostly combatant focused video. The thing is, for some of these characters, well, for most of these characters, when we talk about growth, goals, personality, characterization, it all ties into them growing as a combatant because, of course, sometimes goals factor into how you're going to chase the bag. Essentially, how you're going to maniacally chase power. Something that's talked about a lot is the fact that Luffy's goal is to become the Pirate King. The Pirate King, based on illustration or just how things has been shown to us, one of the strongest, if not the strongest person ever in One Piece. Rocks and Whitebeard has something to say about that, but regardless, top 3 at least in One Piece history. So Luffy, to ascend to that level and the people that he's going to have to go up against, he has to become very strong. Zoro wanting to become the world's greatest swordsman. The people that we speculate to be the world's greatest swordsman, some of the strongest people that we have seen in the verse. Mihawk, obviously the god of the blade. Well, that's Ryuma as well. And now Oden, that's what Zoro has to match and surpass. And Mihawk, his rival, is a Yonko. So Zoro, that's the level he has to attain. Sanji's is a bit more nuanced. And I think I enjoyed that more because of the nuance. Because of it not being as straightforward. Because there's no direct parallel. That's easy. We can see Rayleigh, Roger, Mihawk. Those parallels are all there to just put Luffy and Zoro in those slots. Hooray. For Sanji, we gotta do a little bit more thinking. What's his potential? What's his ceiling? What are his limits? Now, here we go. For Sanji as a combatant, it's interesting because you can't talk about him and his power without referencing his history. For the longest, we were wondering exactly what was Diablo Jambe. Was it Haki, Spirit, Devil Fruit? Like, did they combine his soul with a Devil Fruit without the Devil Fruit drawbacks? Those are theories that were going around. I know you guys think I sound crazy, but back then they were looking at his swirly eyebrows and then looking at Devil Fruit to say, hey, Sanji could just be a Devil Fruit. I lie to you not. Now we know about the lineage factors and everything Judge was doing with his children. Of course, Sanji was a failure, but he has Diablo Jambe. That's tied to his soul and his spirit burning hot, whatever the hell Oda wanted to say and classify it as, but I'm jumping hella forward. Let me double back. Sanji as a combatant does not have the overwhelming power that Zoro has or Luffy has. Sanji's more of a technical fighter. I think as a technician, it's overlooked just how impressive Sanji is when he's fighting, and partially that's because of post-time skip. Post-time skip overall, I think the fights have been scarce, to say the least. Luffy has honestly been dominated in that category in which he has had several fights when the others haven't had that many. One could argue Sanji hasn't had a full fight post-time skip at all. Let's look at this. Other than Fishman Island, which was essentially set up to show exactly how much the Straw Hats had grown. Punk Hazard, we had the Virgo Clash, fight didn't end. Then we had the body switching, the damage he took while being in Nami's body. In Dressrosa, he went up against Doflamingo. Again, that fight didn't end as well, but Doflamingo, we presume he would have won. But Doflamingo at that time was probably besting his captain as well. We go to Zo, but when we actually get to Zo, Sanji's already gone to Whole Cake Island. So then we go to Whole Cake Island. This is my quick view on Whole Cake Island. I just recently made a ranking of the arcs post-time skip, but for Whole Cake Island, I don't think it gets its fair shake because a lot of people who are Sanji fans, or even people who weren't Sanji fans, just fans of the Straw Hats in general, they were very upset at the way Sanji acted throughout the arc. And I think that's somewhat fair based on how Sanji has been portrayed throughout One Piece, but I think sometimes people forget the emotional trauma that he went through in his past that was revealed to us in this arc. That's something he had to overcome for himself. So I think that plays a huge part, but that deserves its own video. Today we're talking about growth, and in Whole Cake Island, I believe he could have gotten a lot more growth in regards to power or as a combatant, but it seems Whole Cake Island was more so a character piece, fleshing out this character, somewhat reinforcing what we already knew about this character, and then I think personally shedding some more light on a character. A lot of things could have been handled better in Whole Cake Island, but I think based on how the situation was, starting from Zo and to now, I think Sanji did the best he could in the ways he knew how. Again, a deeper video for another day. One of the things that I didn't like about Whole Cake Island, where I felt some of the shortcomings, was the fact that it was an island about food, and Sanji being a chef, that wasn't the main focus. Yeah, at the end, Sanji baking a cake for Big Mom, that played an integral role, but I think with the gags and how Oda typically treats his characters, like we saw on the Sea Train versus Wanze, I would have liked to see Sanji use some knives versus somebody that's made of food. Granted, those are just personal things that I would have wanted. They don't necessarily make it a bad arc. Sanji didn't have any full fights in Whole Cake Island. Clashes with Daifuku, Oven, he even clashed with Big Mom. Again, the entire arc was a character piece. At the end, Sanji did receive the raid suit, which is going to be a bigger part of this discussion. There's a lot of things things I can go through, right? Because we can focus on Sanji's endurance, his power, his speed, his intelligence, try to determine where he is now to figure out what the growth could be in Wano and past Wano, but those are separate videos. I think we'd have to talk about how strong Sanji is, which is a separate video in itself, and that goes back to pre-timeskip, evaluating Sanji each arc, which is a much deeper video, and then evaluating Sanji as a character is a character analysis video. So for this, we're just examining his growth. Like I said before, nuance is very important with Sanji's character because there's no set goal as a combatant. We don't know exactly how strong Sanji has to be. This is one thing that's clear that Oda has portrayed throughout the entire story. Where Zoro is, Sanji will be relatively close or equal based on how you view it. Sanji and Zoro, they're essentially Luffy's protectors. Outside of an opposing captain, Sanji and Zoro, they're the first two to go against the next two of an opposing pirate, opposing force, whomever. They're the first two to step up. So that's one of Sanji's roles. The All Blue, like I said, as a dream, as a focus. It's aligned to the Straw Hat crew. So essentially Sanji's role is to make sure that Luffy succeeds. So Sanji has to be as strong as the narrative needs him to be. The thing is, Sanji has to grow as a combatant. One of the things that Oda said about Sanji is that the more passionate he is, the more hotter his flame burns, right? So essentially, the more Sanji cares about something, and you can go back to the judge fight. At the beginning of that fight, Sanji's flame was weak. You can look at his foot, Diablo Jambe. The flame wasn't as intense at the end when Sanji remembered all the things that he went through. So emotions plays a key part in Sanji's combative prowess. We can go through all day the things that Sanji has done to demonstrate his strength. From fighting under intense water pressure, his anti-mana course, his Diablo Jambe. We can go back to Enies Lobby and the Jabra fight versus Zoro's Kaku fight. And that's the thing, that's inevitable. Sanji is going to be compared to Zoro no matter what. And the thing is, comparing these two characters, you're gonna always run into a wall. The main reason is Sanji presents a lot more as a strategist that Zoro just does not. Where Zoro has more overwhelming power than Sanji does. They both have their strengths. Where Zoro, obviously overwhelming power is on Zoro's end. But Sanji isn't a pushover in that department either. Zoro in a fight can think for himself, obviously. But Sanji as a strategist, you can say is unmatched throughout the entire story. What I mean is, we could go through every single arc and look at ways at how Sanji saved the Straw Hat crew, or did things for the betterment of the crew. Even towards morale, I'm gonna point out a specific situation. Usopp versus Jabra. Usopp, of course, was tricked by Jabra because Jabra, he's known as a wolf, and he's doing things to throw Usopp off guard, and he's dismantling Usopp. The character moment here is Usopp again being saved by Sanji, but then having that feeling of not being quite enough, because that was the feeling he had after he got robbed. That was the feeling he had versus Luffy. Whereas there's nothing that I can do well. What is my purpose here? I think Sanji in that moment said the perfect things to Usopp to not only regain his confidence, but by telling Usopp, I'll do whatever you cannot do and you do whatever I cannot. It gave Usopp the confidence to go to the roof of the Tower of Justice, and he was sniping Spandam and the Marines to prevent Robin from being captured. So that's the thing with Sanji. Why it's difficult to talk about him as a combatant, because he offers a lot more in regards to just being a strategist and being one of the thinkers on the crew. But in Whole Cake Island, he had clutch moments as well. And I think that's the next video. That's a video I have to make. The clutchest moments in One Piece, in which a character came through in the last minute when we thought everything was over. But in Whole Cake Island, from saving Pudding, saving Chiffon, saving Luffy, these are the things he does time and time again. But as a combatant, the main thing that he received was the raid suit. It is very widely known how I felt about the raid suit. I was not a fan of it at all. I wanted Sanji to grow organically as a fighter as he had been throughout the story. For the raid suit, I understand what it brought. I understand how important it was and the power that it would bring, but I wanted Sanji to grow differently. That's a personal want of mine. With the narrative, Sanji overcame his history with his family and used the raid suit for the sake of his friends. So initially with the raid suit, most anticipated, or most people felt like, okay, he has the raid suit, so it's a 1-to-1, meaning Sanji's going to operate exactly like he has been, but now he has the raid suit as a buffer for damage and durability, all these things. My issue with the raid suit, and why I didn't think it would help Sanji or make him stronger, because Sanji's fighting style. It's completely different from Yanji's and his brothers, whereas theirs are a bit more straightforward, where Sanji is a lot more technical than just overwhelming power and strength. But in this instance, let's just assume Sanji adding the raid suit, he's still gonna fight the same way. His anti-mana or kick course, his concussed shot, everything that Sanji has, it can be utilized with this raid suit, because the fight versus page 1, that's not how Sanji fights. It was straightforward attacks, just using using overwhelming strength to overpower page 1. Maybe the next time we see it, we see Sanji go more so with his speed, agility, and reflexes, using kicks that we know him for. But regardless, we're assuming that it's just an immediate power-up. With the raid suit, we saw how weak Sanji's brothers were without the raid suit, where they felt like they were useless without it. They didn't want to do anything. Like, they were fine with dying. Again, that goes into their emotions and Judge taking that away from them, but they didn't feel like they would be useful without their raid suit. With the raid suit, they were competing with Big Mom's commanders, not commanders, Big Mom's ministers, because Ichiji essentially got one shot by Katakuri. Reiju did get a shot in on Smoothie, but then she got immediately overwhelmed, but the raid suit gave a lot of power. It's funny because after Sanji got the raid suit, a lot of people were saying, well, Sanji at this point, he should be even a bit stronger than Zoro. Now Zoro has Enma. People are saying maybe they're on the same level again. For the endurance, speed, and power that the raid suit should bring him, assuming again, everything remains the same, it should make him a lot more powerful, just based on the thing that's been portrayed as Sanji's greatest weakness, and that thing is durability. I think Sanji has shown great endurance throughout the story, but durability wise, I think that's his weakness. That's something he has to overcome, which, I mean, a lot of the Straw Hats, they have crazy endurance, but durability, they can't take, like, they're still hurt by hits, right? Because they're human at the end of the day. The raid suit helps with that, because even versus page 1, he got hit, he was like, well, I don't even feel a lot of pain from this. With the power and speed, and of course Diablo Jambe, we're assuming that gets a power up as well, because this thing, Stealth Black, it wasn't specifically modified for him. They had no idea about Sanji's fire powers, so it wasn't modified to amplify his fire powers like the others were. It seems like with Ichiji's, Yanji's, and all their powers, it seems like it amplifies what they already have. From Niji and his electricity, Yanji and his winches, Reiju and her poison, it amplifies all of that. And it's interesting because Reiju, it was revealed in the SBS or Fever Card or whatever, she has a devil fruit. Now where do we go from here? I think by the end of Wano, Sanji should be able to fight with a commander, second or third, and beat them by the end of Wano. Obviously, Sanji's not fighting Smoothie. I wouldn't mind a Sanji and Queen fight, but it goes back to the same thing I said about Zoro and his growth. It doesn't make sense because for Zoro and Sanji, they haven't had the fights and, if you want to use it, the hockey blooms that Luffy has had. But again, they're not going to be as strong as Luffy anyway, so that's a different scenario. But I want to point this out, and I've been thinking about this for a while. They don't need the fights that Luffy has, because Sanji and Zoro, they can get strong without actually becoming stronger. Zoro's gotten stronger because he got a new sword, and that has been the case for Zoro a lot. If he gets a new sword, typically gets a power up, and that's an easy way to power up Zoro. But Sanji's a bit more nuanced. Like, would Sanji use his hands now? We saw how great he was with knives in Enies Lobby. Well, Oda presented a raid suit. In this way, Sanji got stronger without having the hockey blooming. It seems a bit more gimmicky than Zoro getting the sword because that's been happening. That was expected, especially in Wano. Regardless, it's a power up. At the end of it, as a strategist, Sanji's already top tier. As a technical fighter, already top tier. The raid suit gives him the buffs that he needed to, I think, achieve his potential. The recipes and the things he learned during the time skip, I don't think we've seen everything from it. We've seen Hell's Memories one time. I think that's perfect, and with the raid suit being fire resistant, that plays a part as well. And you know, a part of this is like, should Sanji still be compared to Zoro as a combatant? Here's a difficult thing. Why I think he should still be compared and will always be compared, because that's what Oda wants. Oda will never say who's stronger. He will never say who would win in a fight. It will always be a tug of war and back and forth. In post-time skip, Sanji's had the tougher combatants. Zoro has not. Sanji's had the more inferior moments. Zoro hasn't had those. It's easy to say that Zoro is easily stronger than Sanji now, based on what's been portrayed. Sending Fujitora back, want to go to movies and things like that. If Sanji and Zoro were to fight right now, it would be a high diff to extreme diff fight. Who wins? It's anybody's guess. Regardless though, it would be a high diff to extreme diff fight, disputing anything that's happened. I think people look at the moments versus Doflamingo versus Virgo, and people use those and say, well, that would never happen to Zoro. And I agree, because Zoro as a character, he's not put into situations like that to have things like that happen to him. Of course, facing a Navy admiral, you would think, well, he's stronger than Doflamingo, but Doflamingo, like I said before, a different type of fighter. Not about overwhelming power, more about tricks and being cunning. While I think right now, portrayal-wise, Zoro gets the edge, no doubt. I think when you look deeper into the story and what's been shown from both characters, it's not as huge a gap as you might think. If there even is one, especially with presenting the raid suit, which Oda can make Sanji as strong as he needs to be. So I think that's the theme of this video. Throughout the entirety of the arcs in One Piece, Sanji is as strong as he needs to be. Sanji has goals, he completes those goals, he saves the Straw Hats, he instills confidence, even with him leaving Dressrosa and taking on Big Mom's crew by himself, going to Zou. He was in charge after they left. He led the charge there. So what does Sanji have to do now to, I don't know, prove himself as a combatant or as a character? The character thing is a bit deeper because I know a lot of people aren't going to forgive him based on some things that transpired in Whole Cake Island, which is, I don't know, whatever, defeating a commander and supporting Luffy. Essentially, that's what he has to do in Wano to prove himself and to, I don't know, win fans over again. I think Whole Cake Island left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, especially based on the fact that he fought Luffy in Whole Cake Island. That was really bad, without context, of course. But I see a lot of great things in Sanji's future, especially in Wano and post, because the raid suit, even though it's convenient, a much needed power up for Sanji, just like Enma was for Zoro. So leave your thoughts below. How do you view Sanji's growth post time skip? Again, this is not a how strong is Sanji video necessarily. That's a bit deeper. We'd have to go through a lot more things. Just leave your thoughts on Sanji as a fighter and with the raid suit, without the raid suit. Just want to know what you guys are thinking. Again, leave your thoughts below. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you to my patrons for your support. I appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at BravoD.Ace. Follow me on Instagram at BravoD.Ace. You can like, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.